all too often we stay single or get married for the wrong reasons. So even this past week, there's a couple of guys I follow online who've offered a lot of good, just life advice, advice for men, advice for marriage, but they posted this week that they're getting a divorce. And while I don't know them personally, it still hit hard, and a lot of the comments were reflecting that as well. It's like, man, if these guys who have all the resources, all the knowledge, all of that, can't make marriage work, what's the hope for the rest of us? And so there's a lot of people like, all right, I don't want to get married. If that's going to be the outcome, I see all these people, good guys, and surely it can hit closer to home as well. As we get older, we realize that our parents' marriage is probably not perfect. And so we have all these assumptions about marriage. It's like, yeah, I don't even want to deal with that. So a lot of people stay single because they don't want to deal with the struggle and heartache of marriage. For others, it's like, okay, I just can't wait to get married. As soon as they get married, then all the problems will be solved. And so I have dealt with sexuality. I'm horny. I want this place to release. And so now I'm going to get married, just find a warm body to connect with. And again, not all the good reasons to get married. And so when we talk about discipleship, real life discipleship means that we must bring a kingdom perspective into our relationship status in every season as well. And so how we choose to be single or how we choose to be married needs to come from a kingdom perspective. So it's not just personal, it's not just selfish, here's what I want to do. I'm not reacting to one status or the other. It is an intentional kingdom choice of I'm choosing to be single, or I'm accepting my singleness, or I'm choosing to be married, and I'm accepting the assignment that goes along with that. As we talked last time about the God-reflective sexuality. And so we reflect God, we can start with the attributes of God and learn something about our sexuality, or we can start with our sexuality and learn something about God. And I believe that's true when it comes to our relational status as well. Whether we're single or married, I believe we can reflect aspects of God and His kingdom and His love. And so singles get to reflect the inclusive nature of God. And so for God so loved the world. This includes everyone. No one is excluded from that love God, that He loved everyone. And so singleness is that opportunity where I'm not limited in who I show up with. I'm not limited in how I express my love. I can show my love to everyone. And so there's an inclusive nature to God and His love that's reflected in singleness. Where marriage then gets to reflect the exclusive nature of God, that whoever believes, that's not for everyone. And so it's those who believe now get to have this intimate relationship with God. And so now this is reflective of Christ in the church, where as we believe, now we get to become brides of Christ. Now we get to be included in this intimate, passionate relationship with God. But again, that's not for everyone. And so there's two sides of the coin, as it were. There's the inclusive nature that singleness gets to represent, and then marriage, the exclusive nature. And so while singleness and marriage are flip sides of the same coin, they're not in competition with each other. So there's times in church history where singleness was actually elevated, that you were more spiritually mature if you're single because you didn't have to be subject to the desires of this world, that you've escaped the desire of this world and you could remain single. It seems in modern church culture that has reversed, where now you're considered spiritually mature if you're married and now a suspect if you remain single. I think theologically those are both unhelpful extremes that we go to, that marriage and singleness are not in competition with each other, nor is a reaction to each other. Like we were saying before, it's like, I'm not staying single just because marriage is difficult, and I'm not just getting married because I want to avoid singleness. Each have an honored place in God's kingdom. So again, if I'm choosing singleness, then I need to do that from a kingdom perspective. If I'm choosing marriage, then again, I need to do that from a kingdom perspective. And so Jesus in eunuchs. This is coming from Jesus' teaching on marriage in Matthew 19. It says some are born eunuchs, some are made eunuchs by others, and some make themselves eunuchs for the sake of God and His kingdom. I think this can be applied to singleness as well, that there may be some who, based on physical, mental conditions from birth, singleness is going to be their lot in life. There may be some who are scarred by others in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And again, singleness is going to be their lot in life. As disciples, this point 3, some choose singleness. They make themselves eunuch for the sake of God and His kingdom. So this is not something that is done to me. Making the point here that singleness is a valid option in God's kingdom. So it's not that you're a secondary citizen. Like, no, some choose this lifestyle for the sake of God and His kingdom. And so if this is a lifestyle that I'm choosing, am I doing so for the sake of God in His kingdom? Real life discipleship means that we consider our singleness a gift. Like, I don't want to be single. How's this a gift? It's a gift in the sense that it's an opportunity. So God is giving you this season, however long that season is. And so whether that's for a life or whether that's for another few months, another few years, again, what do you do with this season? It's an opportunity to serve. And so we don't have the luxury to say, all right, my real life doesn't start until I get married. And so now I'm going to neglect this opportunity. If God has given you breath in your body, the blood is running warm in your veins, then you have an opportunity to serve today. And so how do I do that in whatever status I'm in? And so your singleness is a gift in that you have certain opportunities to advance God's kingdom in this current status. Of course, this is a blessing and a burden. As we were joking earlier, this is February. This is Love Month. Some call Valentine's Day Single Awareness Day. And so you're aware of your singleness as everyone is pairing off, doing their things, all romantic and lovey-dovey. And it's like, yeah, that's not for me. And so there's a burden to singleness that I don't want to pretend just goes away. And so as much as we're saying, yes, choose this for the kingdom's sake, find some joy and celebration in your singleness, I don't want to deny that there's a burden that comes with that as well. There's an ache that comes with that. But singleness does allow you to be more nimble and free in your practice of love. So several years ago, there was a guy at church went through this public shame sort of incident within the church. And so there was not a lot of people rallying to help him. But I'm single at the time, and so I just pack up myself and go, and we spend a few hours just chatting and talking. And so because I didn't have to check in with my wife and figure out how to arrange kids, I didn't have to do all of that. It's like, here's a need, I can just go and do it. And so my singleness gave me some nimbility, if that's a word. I was able to be more nimble, more free, just to move and be flexible in my expression of love. I don't have to wait for, all right, again, like even this morning, getting ready for class. I got a sick kid, and all right, do you need this? There's just a lot more things that you have to deal with that when you're single, it's like, if there's a need to express love, I'm just free to do that. And singleness also allows us to be fruitful and multiply spiritually. So like with Paul, he called Timothy his true son in the faith. And so we too, in our singleness, get to produce true sons and daughters in the faith. And so spiritual maturity does not depend on our marital status. A lot of times where you have your youth group, then you have your young adults, and then your young married / families, and then your general adult classes and prime timers and the like. And so some of the implicit understanding is that you mature as you get married and do all these things. I was 34 before I got married. So at some point it's like, all right, do I still fit in the young professional, young adult class? At what point do I mature and do something else? But sometimes the understanding is like, no, you're not spiritually mature in the church. You can't move into these other life groups until you get married. And then as soon as you get married, all of a sudden now you're mature and now you can do all these other things. And the case that I'm making is like, no, spiritual maturity does not depend on your marital status. There's things that you can do here as a single that produces life, that God's kingdom is not solely in the physical world, that being fruitful and multiply is not just about making babies. In God's kingdom now, it is about making disciples of Christ. And you get to do that even as singles. I work as a licensed marriage and family therapist. But I started that work while I was single. And that seemed strange and got some pushback and some grief. It's like, how can you do marriage work while you're single? It's like, God called me to this. And I had a lot of wrestling with God about, okay, if you're calling me to this, like, can I? It'd be nice to have a wife if I'm going into this field. Right. It's like, it seems to make sense from a human perspective, but God has his own ways. And it's like, no, I'm giving you this power to do this. And some of it even now, and so on my signet ring, I put an Alpha and Omega. And I got this while I was single to remind me that God brought me into this profession so that my work, my gifting is not dependent on my marital status, that God gave me the gift to do this before his marriage. So my marriage gives me a lot of experience to enrich my calling, but my calling is not dependent on the marriage itself. God gave me this calling and was able to empower me to do that again is not dependent on my marital status. What is that thing he's calling you to? And so again, you don't have to wait on, all right, once I get married, then I can figure out how to be spiritually mature. Then I have arrived. It's like, no, like in your singleness, whatever God has called you to do, you can do that now. Yes, it looks different in your singleness, but you can still do that now. You can be a marriage therapist while you're single. That is possible. Marriage and sex therapist for that. It's like, really not, but here we are. Moving on to marriage. And so real life discipleship means we consider marriage also as a gift, an opportunity to advance God's kingdom as a couple. And so marriage is not just for you. It's not just for your personal happiness. It is also a gift for you to advance God's kingdom, but now as a couple. Marriage is not the promised land. Or maybe it is. So when I first said that, I was like, yeah, it's not the promised land, but there's some ways in which it is kind of like the promised land. Often, myself, dealing with other individuals, clients, they see marriage as, all right, I just got to hold on. Once I make it through singleness and get to the promised land, once I get to marriage, then all my problems will be solved. I just have to make it there. So we treat the promised land as that end destination. It's like, no, it's just the beginning. And so the maybe it is that even the children of Israel, like God gave them that land flowing with milk and honey, they still had to fight for it. They still had to work for it. It wasn't just, here you go. There was still effort involved. And that's going to be true for marriage as well. That yes, there's a lot of blessings that come with marriage, but there's a lot of burdens that come with marriage as well. Like your growth in some ways is just taking a new level, a new spark as you're engaging with your spouse, that you still have to fight through many things. And so it's not, I've arrived and now we have a fairy tale wedding and now we get to live happily ever after. It's like, no, this is the beginning of the story. This is not the end. And so part of marriage, this is for your own transformation as well. So some of the challenges, the practical realities, just living in the same household is all working to form you into the image of Christ. And so for you to have a vision, for those of you who desire to be married at some point, again, this is not just for your own personal happiness. This is part of your own transformation as well. So God will use your relationship to challenge you, to refine you. Often use it the image of a crucible. So it's like it's this refining fire, this refining furnace that allows you to produce more results, produce in the image of Christ. In your marriage is to serve your community in love. Again, it's not just for your own personal happiness. And so in as much as we're in the month of love and how we make each other happy and all the warms and fuzzies, like there's nothing wrong with that. Enjoy that to the full. But how do you also have a kingdom perspective of your marriage? That your marriage is to bless others. And so what can we accomplish as a couple that we cannot accomplish individually? And so part of marriage is, yes, now we're able to do, all the way back to Adam and Eve, to rule and have dominion over the earth. That was a mission that they have together. So it's not just Adam. It's like, no, Adam, you can't do this alone. Here's Eve. And so what in marriage are we accomplishing that we cannot accomplish by ourselves? And so part of what I'm trying to do here is both the vision for singleness and the vision for marriage. How do you see that from a kingdom perspective? That whatever my status is, and I have an opportunity, whether I'm single or married, to advance God's kingdom, how am I seeing this from a kingdom perspective and not just what is this getting me personally or the personal burdens and all, like, yes, all that's true, and how do you see it from a kingdom perspective? So dating is best seen as an opportunity for you to wisely discern if this particular relationship that you're involved with is continuing to cross the bridge into marriage. And so we talked about social sexuality last time and the inclusive nature, our sexuality, the inclusive nature of God, we get to be friends, have these social connections with everyone. Occasionally there's someone who catches your eyes like, okay, I'm considering this person, can I enter into a covenant relationship of marriage with this person? Dating is, at least in our modern way, that process of discerning, all right, is this someone I want to choose to enter into this covenant relationship with?
Corey, there's two perspectives I've kind of heard from on Christian ideology on dating.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of like this idea on one side is like dating for experience of and maybe I'm using the wrong language here, but I'm going to date so that I can learn what type of person I want to marry. So I'm going to date someone, get to know them, see if that's the right person, and then there's more the dating for marriage mentality of I'm only going to date this person if I think this is the kind of person I'm going to marry. I've kind of heard those two different thoughts around it. There's probably a combination thereof. But I wonder just what's your perspective on that, on dating, on what our mentality should be doing to that.
Yeah, the counselor answer to me is going to be both.
Okay.
And so there's aspects that, yes, I'm dating for experience and figuring out, particularly like those in their 20s, they're still trying to find themselves. And so, yes, they may have to date to figure out what is it. I'm trying to find myself. And so part of the dating is, yes, learning who is a potential marriage partner, but it's also learning my likes and dislikes and figuring out what I'm compatible with, some of that I don't know yet. And so this is the relationship continuum bridge. And I will not take credit for this. My mentor, the late Doug Rosenau, designed this for the Soul Virgins book that he wrote. And so you're going across a bridge. On this side is social sexuality. On this side is marriage. And so three main categories of relationship. You have your connecting, your coupling, and your covenanting. Connecting is what we connect in social sexuality. Coupling, we define ourselves as an exclusive relationship. Coveting is now where we're in this relationship of marriage together. And so connecting, again, you start with friends. That most people, you're going to start your relationships here as friends. You're connecting as brothers and sisters, and all right, everything is good. There may be a spark of energy that recognizes, oh, here's someone I would like to get to know more than friends. And so now you're moving into considering. Here, you're still considering and connecting. And so you can see the post here. The initial dating is considering, and so this is what I would call more the casual dating. So here, again, you can date around because you're still trying to find who you are, still trying to find what you're like. And so this is the more casual dating. You notice at the bottom that this is still part of social sexuality. And so you can date casually. You can find different people who you like and like, but you're not kissing, you're not making out, you're certainly not having sex at this stage. Like you can date around, but at this stage, you're still in a connecting. You're not in a coupling relationship where you're now becoming more exclusive. We'll talk about DTRs here in just a moment, define a relationship. But once you define a relationship as a couple, now we're in exclusive relationship together. Initially, you're still considering, right? What are our likes, what are our dislikes? Do we enjoy being with each other? At this point, once you define yourself as a coupling, this is where we need to be eyeing marriage. And so if you're just dating around, then fine. We're trying to find ourselves, and it's not necessarily forward moving. But if we're defining ourselves as a couple, then we're now getting on the bridge, moving in this direction. And so more intentionality is required. A lot of exploration can happen here, but once you define yourself as a couple and want to open up to more physical, erotic behaviors, then all right, we need to have that intention of moving in that direction. So again, starts off with considering, moves into confirming. This is where I would say is more the pre-engagement sort of stuff. And so this is where a lot of this will come out in considering just natural getting to know each other. But the confirming, this is what you do privately with yourself of, right, are we sure that we want to move in this direction? And so this is where you put all the good, the bad, the ugly on the table, things that you've not talked about before, that has not come out naturally. And the confirming, this is where you privately with each other confirm, all right, is this the direction we want to move in? This is also the stage where I recommend premarital counseling. We can meet with someone, whether that is a professional or just a mentor, but someone a third party who can have eyes on your relationship and help you discern, all right, is this direction that we want to move in? Committing is then where I'll put the formal engagement. So this is where now you're engaged and you can make it more public announcement of your commitment to move forward and figure out all the practical realities of moving your life together. And so it may be opening up a joint checking account, figuring out where you want to live, all that stuff would be in that formal engagement, obviously planning for the marriage and the like, and then marriage. Dating tips, starting with having regular DTRs. It's simply defining the relationship. And so a lot of clients come in, sometimes been dating for years. It's like, okay, well, what's the size of relationship? What is the nature of your relationship? Like, are you a thing or not? I don't know. So some have called it what do they say, a situationship, where it's a situation, not sure what exactly it is. It's like, okay. And so I don't always pull the bridge out, but sometimes I allude to it as like, well, are you in an exclusive relationship or not? Like, I don't know. I mean, like, we've been hanging out, we've been doing a bunch of stuff, and often doing a lot of sexual stuff, but it's like you've not even defined yourself as a couple. Like, ugh. But there's not clear boundaries there, and they don't have that language. And so, again, to regularly define the relationship, like mentally, this is one of the things I was thankful for my mentor and teaching and even doing this while I was still single. Because part of my dating experience, I was able to pull this out with me and my wife, and here's where we're at. So it's like a mental map of here's where we're at in our relationship moving forward. And so that can be helpful for you as well. Okay, where are we at right now in our relationship? And so what is appropriate at each stage? And even, all right, are we a couple now? And what does that mean to be a couple? All right, are we now affirming our relationship, and what does that mean? Each step you're able to discern. But to have regular conversations around that, so not just slide into a relationship and I guess we've been hanging out, so maybe we're a couple. I don't know. Like have the conversation and clearly define are we a couple or not, and where are we at in our relationship. Consider the 5 F's. And so in your dating, part of dating is you can think about it as gathering data or gathering the ecology, the soils, like can we thrive together? And so what are those things that allow me to become the man, the one that God has called us to be? Are we moving toward that kingdom vision in marriage? Well, let's consider these things. And so spending some time just over food. So food has a way of bonding, connecting. Certainly you can find your likes and dislikes as it relates to food. But a lot of good conversations happen just around food. Fun. What are the things that you enjoy doing? So your hobbies, your interests. And it doesn't always have to be like skydiving or anything grand. What are those natural things that you enjoy? So if it's just walking around the park or reading a good book, what are the things that here's how I live my life? Can I invite you into some of that? Being able to introduce each other to your friends. And I'll add family to this as well. I've had several clients where their relationship has become essentially isolated. It's like, okay, what are your family and friends think? It's like, we don't know. It's like, that's a red flag. If you're not able to embed this dating relationship into your friends and family, that's a red flag that something is off. Again, depending on where you're at in the bridge, what's appropriate there. And so you may not, on the first date, hey, here's mom, dad, here's my friend. That may not happen on the first date. But at some point, as you're moving across this bridge, who your friends? Because that is a litmus test for me. Because if all your friends and families are like, yeah, I'm not sure about this relationship, again, that's that your friends and family are determinative of that, but they know you and they can see things on the outside, but sometimes you're just so in love that you have your blinders up and you're missing some things. And so being able to plug in with your friends and family and say, what is going on here? Future, where are you going in life? So what are your life goals, your career goals, your family goals? Like, do you want to have kids or not? It's one of those things that you need to talk about in dating, because once you get married, it's like if you're not on the same page there, that's not a pretty picture. But even things of how do you see your life going forward? And so do you want to be very stable and rooted? I want to be in one community, I want kids to be in one home throughout high school, and I just want to put my roots here. Or are you more, I want to travel the world, and I want to do this, I want to do that, and I don't want to be in one spot for more than a few years. Those are good conversations to have. Because at some point, if you're partnered with someone who wants to travel the world, and you're like, no, I just want to stay in one spot, again, you're gonna butt heads. So these things are not incompatible, but if you have those different desires, dating is a time to sort what does this look like? And then certainly faith. And so where are you at in your faith? Where are they at in their faith? Are we on the same page there? And so are they simply giving their faith lip service? That, oh yeah, I'm a good Christian person because I just want to connect with you. But then once you get there, it's like, no, like Christianity, that's not something that you actually hold as a deep value. You're just a surface Christian and not a sincerely committed disciple of Christ. Again, those good things to know. What are our theological differences? And so being able to sort through that. Some of those differences may be non-issues. As we talked about, those important considerations, but not necessarily essential. So if we're on the same page with the essential things, maybe we carry on. But there may be some essential things or some important things like, I don't know if I want to go forward with that. So yeah, it may not be essential, but it's important to me, and I'm not sure I want to partner with someone that's too important to me not to have in place. So having these conversations throughout your dating experience. Thinking holistically, and as I was referencing earlier, where the dating experience is body, soul, and spirit. So it's not just we get to know each other physically, we just get to know each other socially. It includes all of that. And so spending some time, yes, in the physical realm, but also in the soul, the psyche, the mental, emotional, social realms, and the spiritual realms as well. So how are we connecting on all these levels? I will add, with the bridge, there's different, we talked about the erotic behaviors in true sex, and so we often talk about different boundaries as it relates to physical expressions, but there needs to be boundaries as it relates to the emotional, mental, spiritual expressions as well. That sometimes I've had clients who we're praying, and then all of a sudden we're having sex, and we don't know how that happened. It's like praying with someone, sharing your spirit with each other is a very intimate experience. And so there needs to be boundaries of how you share yourself, soul and spirit as well. Particularly with the spiritual level, that there's a very fine line between the sexual and the spiritual. That there's a reason that we call sexual experiences a type of ecstasy. And so there are very close to touching those spiritual realms. And so if you're opening yourself up spiritually to one another, the body wants to make that a concrete experience as well. So to be mindful of who you open yourself up with spiritually or on a soul level at different points in your dating experience as well.
So that reminds me of a piece of advice I was given from a small group leader at one of my college groups a while back, where he had advised, like, with dating, don't pray with the person you're dating until engagement, until you're a lot more serious because of that connection. What I initially definitely pushed back on that. I was like, that feels absurd to me. Like, why would you not pray, bring God into it? But I also hear what you're saying of, like, the level of intimacy that invites into a relationship.
Yeah, some of it's going to be context as well. Certainly there's degrees of intimacy, and so I would not rule out all praying, just like I don't rule out all physical contact. But at what point are we in, and what's appropriate, and what levels to go to? And so some with the praying may be, do we pray out in public versus in private in our apartment by ourselves when no one else is around? It's like, okay, if we want to pray and go there, can we go somewhere where, again, we're protecting those other boundaries is where I would go. I think missionally. And so again, why is God bringing the two of us together? And so what is this marriage? If we're on this bridge heading toward marriage, then we need to have a mission mindset as well. And so is this person just in my life to make me happy, to meet my sexual needs, to have some emotional, relational companionship? Is that the extent of this relationship, or has God called us into something more? I believe God has called us into something more. And so part of dating is to think, okay, how are we bringing our lives together? And so knowing yourself, what is the mission that God's called me to? What is that unique calling that God has called me to? Can I now discern that with my partner as well? And what does this look like maybe to now bridge our lives together? It doesn't have to be a perfectly clear, nailed down vision, but to at least have that mindset that God is bringing us together for a reason, to accomplish something together that we can't do apart. And so how do we, again, expand this relationship so that we're not seeing our marriage just from a selfish standpoint? A lot of people say, it's not selfish, I'm marrying someone else. And so it's not just me, but if it's still self-centered and that it's just about the two of you, that's still a selfish mindset that you bring into that relationship. And so yes, you're pouring into each other, but your relationship is not just about the two of you. How do you use your relationship to be on mission for God as well? And the final tip is grieving and cleaving as you move toward marriage. There's benefits to singleness. And as you move toward marriage, you have to give some of those up. And so some of the freedom, some of the flexibility, all of that stuff. I'm an introvert. I love reading. I love my quiet time. And that's not a reality in marriage in the same way that it used to be. And so that's one of those things that, as I'm moving in that direction, some of those benefits of singleness, I do have to grieve. But now I'm cleaving toward those blessings, those benefits that are in marriage. And I think it's important to do both. And so a lot of clients jump into marriage without that grieving process, and then 3 years in, 5 years in, 7 years in, 10 years in, it's like, man, I miss all my single life. it's like be intentional up front of, yes, I'm choosing a new path, and that means I'm giving up some things. But it's a willing choice, and so it's not, it doesn't catch me off guard later in life of, man, what happened to all my single days? I'm choosing to give that up as I'm choosing to commit to marriage moving forward. So I'm grieving the old and cleaving to the new. So the rules of life. So our practice inclusive love, which singleness represents. And so how do you practice, regardless of your relationship status, and inclusive love? That part of discipleship, part of love, God's love the world. How do I bring that love, that friendship to everyone that I meet and don't have to put boundaries there? And so singleness represents that, but again, this is true whether you're married or single, that there's a part of discipleship that requires or calls us to practice this inclusive love. I'll practice exclusive love, which marriage represents. So again, there's a place that we need to practice exclusive love, and even in singleness, there may be boundaries to your friendship. So there's going to be my inner circle friendship that I may express an exclusive love for them that's not for everyone. There's a certain specialness to these friendships that I can't be friends in the same way with everyone. But these are my special friends. So the exclusive nature of love that can come with that. And even in your calling, even in your missional work, you're not called to serve everyone. Like there's a particular call that God has given you, and so there's an exclusive nature even in your calling. Marriage represents that. Again, this call of exclusive love is not limited to just marriage. And then finally, I will wisely discern and faithfully steward all my relationships. So whether this is friendship, whether this is coupling, whether this is marriage, again, how do I bring that kingdom mindset to whatever relationship I'm in? So it's not, I just got to hold on into this stage, or as long as I'm not in that stage, no, whatever relationship God has given me, it's an opportunity to advance His kingdom. And so how do I wisely and faithfully steward all my relationships for God for the sake of His kingdom? Those are my thoughts. I'll open the floor. Thoughts, comments, questions, reflections on anything.
I'll just say I really like the part where you talked about what you need to include in your relationship and like the dating aspect, where it's like food, friends, family, fun, stuff like that. I think that's really important, that people kind of idealize who they want to date instead of who is really best for them.
Sometimes we try to conform to this person that looks good, feel attracted to them, whatever, and then we're trying to conform to them without doing the due diligence of, all right, are we actually good with each other? And so knowing ourselves and then knowing them as well. And so dating is a good opportunity to discern, to take in that data, or to survey the land of, all right, are we good for each other to, again, accomplish kingdom purposes?
And friends are really important to that.
Yes. We have our blinders up. And so friends have a way of, hopefully if they're good friends, shoot us straight and not just tell us what we want to hear. And give us the good, the bad as well. Good.
One thing, when I saw your 5 F's, another F I thought about was finances.
Oh, yeah.
That's a
That is so real.
And so as you're dating and going out, like, how do you handle your finances? How do you handle your money? Do you want to always go to the nice, expensive restaurants? Can you be okay with a Chick-fil-A? Can you be okay with brown bagging it? And being able to have some of those conversations of, all right, are we on the same page of how we handle our money? That's a good one. I may have to add 6 F's. Thank you.
Yep.
That is a point of contention for many married couples. And so that is something to discern in dating.
That is
Didn't mean to diss Chick-fil-A. Yes.
I don't know what your budget looks like, but
I like talking about covenant of marriage, because there's 2 covenants. It's between you and your spouse, and between you and God.
Yes.
And you don't hear it in religious circles as much as you used to, but marriage, God intended marriage to be for life. And if you're going into it, well, if this doesn't work out, you have a very bad attitude right there. Because if this doesn't work out, we can do something about it. You need to be looking at it, and there's exception. You need to be looking at it as a lifelong commitment.
And like your point that it's not just to your spouse. Well, a lot of times, all right, well, they are not holding out, feel like they're doing their part, and so that gives me excuse. Like, no, my covenant was not just to you. My covenant was before God, and so this commitment I made before God to death through me part, to do us part, to live this out faithfully. And so to have that perspective that, no, this is my duty before God to do this, and it's not dependent on, not really even dependent on you entirely. That it includes you, but it's not ultimately dependent on you. This is how I be faithful to what God has called me to.
And I just thought of another F.
Okay, you give me a lot of F's.
Forgiveness.
Yeah.
You're right,
Yeah.
hold your book.
Certainly in marriage, you're going to have conflict with each other. And so if while you're dating, you're just putting your best foot forward, and there's a place for dating for doing that, but part of any healthy relationship is navigating conflict. And so if you're like, man, we're just so perfect, we never had a fight, again, as a therapist, that's a red flag. You've never had any point of conflict because someone is not showing up with their true, authentic self. If you're showing up with your true, authentic self, you're going to have a spark somewhere. That doesn't mean that you're yelling and screaming at each other, but you're going to have a disagreement just because you're two different people. So now how do you practice forgiveness and sorting through that? If you can do that in dating, that sets you up well for marriage. So yes, another good F. Thank you.
What does it look like to, and you touched some on this, but to embrace kind of your, the place where you're at, to fully accept that, embrace that, and yet have openness to, or even potentially want to change that, of like what that looks like in the future. For me, being single, to embrace that, to accept that, like, because I do want to fully embrace this season of my life and not see it as a curse, see it as a blessing that I'm going to rejoice in, but also I want to stay open to what could be next. And that could even be if like I'm not in a place where I feel like I have a calling to singleness, where there's a vocation I want to embrace for the rest of my life. But even if I got to that place, to still have an openness that something could change. Like how do you hold those two things that may even apply to some extent when you're dating and you are still single, you're not married yet.
Right.
So you're not in that full commitment stage of like, how do you embrace where you're at while still looking forward to what could be coming?
Yeah, there's a tension there of, like you're saying, how do I accept this state that I'm in today as an opportunity to serve God's kingdom, and I have the desire for something more. And that desire, I'm groaning and waiting for that more. And so I don't have to give up that desire that, again, while it's a gift today to be single, and I need to use that, I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. And so what do I do with that ache? A lot of it's going to be groaning and waiting. That I see that, I'm moving in that direction, I'm intentional about moving in that direction, but I'm not putting the rest of my life on hold as I'm waiting on that. And so it's not giving up that desire, it's holding on to that, but not hyper-focusing on what you want that you neglect today. And so there's just a tension there. And this is where community and all that stuff, helping you to navigate that and honor that, or again, it's not shutting that down and, all right, I just got to focus on this and pretend that my desires don't exist. No, your desires are there, and those desires are helping to spark and motivate you toward that, because God may have placed marriage on your heart as a vision to eventually move in that direction, and so that desire is keeping you moving in that direction, but not to make marriage an idol that, again, my life is on hold until I get there. Nope, that's the desire, moving in that direction. Meanwhile, I have an opportunity to be single, and I'm going to make the most of that opportunity as well.
That's excellent.